Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk movies. I have not been sleeping well these last few weeks. Welcome to week 3 of Halloween month. Let's get things started. Number 1. Triangle. Never seen it. Heard it was good. Melt your brain. I'm all for that shit. Let's go. Jess is a young mother of an autistic son, and she's been invited on a boat trip by Greg, who is smitten with her, along with a few other friends of his. Unfortunately, in the middle of the ocean, they hit a storm which overturns the boat. Luckily, they're saved by an ocean liner, but as soon as they board, the ship is completely devoid of any life aside from one shadowy figure. As they explore the ship, they start getting killed one by one, with Jess as the sole suspect that is murdering them, even though she encounters a masked figure with a shotgun. All but Jess is killed, and despite fighting off the killer, throwing the person off the ship, Jess looks to the ocean and sees another overturned boat, and the survivors calling for help are none other than Greg, the others, and herself. God damn it, I wanna like this so much, but it's such a frustrating watch. Okay, let me get this out of the way. If you're used to movies like Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day, or anything involving time loops, then you're probably gonna follow this movie just fine. What you won't understand, I'll speak for myself from this point on, what I don't understand is the character motivations. Considering how impossible it is to talk about without giving away important information, fair warning, mild spoilers ahead. The very moment that Jess realizes that she's in a time loop of sorts, she could have saved all of her friends by going up to them as soon as they board, explaining to them, yeah, shit's weird here, someone killed my friends and will eventually kill all of you. But instead, she hides from them for no reason. The way she tries to communicate with everyone is baffling at how inept she is at it. I thought I had some hope when she makes an attempt to break the loop by doing something different, but everything goes right back on track and I'm left with little more than irritation. Why does going home mean killing her friends? We, the audience, are never presented with evidence that this is the solution. There's even loops of future Jess that never make an appearance in real time. And that ending, fuck. That only made the entire movie make even less sense. This is a complete shame because I think the acting is freaking great from Melissa George. There are hints of brilliance and wonderfully haunting visuals, but it all ultimately feels hollow and needlessly depressing. My honest rating for Triangle, a week 3 out of 5. Number 2. The Watcher in the Woods. So, Disney made a horror film, y'all. An intentional horror film. I have seen it before, and just a couple years ago, actually, and I remember liking it. Let's see if it holds up. Teenager Jan Curtis, her parents, and little sister Ellie have just moved into their new home, previously owned by the reclusive and mysterious Mrs. Aylwood, whose daughter disappeared 30 years ago. Not long after settling in, both Jan and Ellie begin to experience paranormal things. Ellie being whispered to by a ghostly presence, and Jan being guided by a mysterious light, but most importantly, ghostly visions of Mrs. Aylwood's daughter, Karen. Soon, Jan suspects that the light is guiding her to solve the mystery of what happened to Karen and even possibly save her. You know what? I still kinda like this movie. It's not exactly one of the horror greats, but if you have a youngin' and wanna see how they do with a scary movie without overwhelming them, this might actually be a safe bet. What I find most compelling is that this isn't a kids movie that panders to kids. It doesn't hold their hand and force-feed information to the audience. It respects them and gives a legitimately compelling narrative. What did happen to Karen? How are the other 3 adults involved? What is the Watcher? What's that light? Who's whispering to Ellie? It hits the beats of every horror film, but doesn't always rely on jump scares. You get a couple, but it's not prominent throughout the flick. There are some chilling visuals. That funhouse mirror scene ought to be considered one of the great scary moments in cinematic history, but again, nothing that I would imagine scarring a child. To balance all that out, I love the chemistry between Lynn Holly Johnson and Kyle Richards, and honestly, I think Ellie is one of the better live-action child roles Disney ever had. Not too obnoxious in how cute she is, but contributes to the plot, and even saves her big sister in one scene. I would say that the only real issue is the ending. I won't give anything away, but let's just say it doesn't quite make the overall narrative make sense, and there's some seriously messed up implications that just might be more depressing than satisfying. But on the whole, I do think that this is a solid kid-friendly scary movie with its own merits for adults. My honest rating for The Watcher in the Woods, a 4 out of 5. Number 3. House of the Dead 2. I bet most of you didn't even know there was a House of the Dead 1, let alone a sequel. And yes, before you ask, this is the same House of the Dead as the popular zombie shooter commonly found in arcades. It was adapted into a movie and has gone down in history as my personal favorite bad movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And I'm here to talk about the sequel. And very similar to the first one, I have shown many friends, and each and every one of them has also really liked this movie, granted for different reasons. But here we go. I love butts. Set months after the events of the first film, zombies have quickly taken over a university. The army sends in special forces and a scientist duo intent on getting a blood sample from what they believe is the first generation of zombies and may be able to synthesize a cure from it, all before a nuclear strike takes out the city. I think the movie is aging a little bit. Just a little bit. I admit half the reason I found entertainment at all is because of nostalgia from watching this with friends. With that said, entertainment is still present in this stinker. Mostly from how shitty the script is and how it's so far removed from the video game that you'd be forgiven for forgetting that this was a House of the Dead movie. Damn thing doesn't even take place in a house. The original barely did either, so we're on brand. Anyway, at its core, it's just a generic zombie movie, and a bad one at that. But what makes it stand out in my mind is just how bafflingly bad the writing is and the choices made. Starting strong, making Sid Haig look like a friggin' talentless pussy. While most will find that insulting, he's only in the first few minutes of the flick, but it's a memorable shit stain of an appearance. After that, you have the most generic dialogue. Soldiers acting like frat house boys measuring dicks, gratuitous scenes with attractive women in their underwear. Other soldiers include psychos who take selfies with zombies they kill, looting bodies for valuables, cowards, and routine idiots who get themselves killed. Action sequences are so ridiculous that you'd swear we're in a bad comedy. Yet it works for how serious it takes itself sometimes. Even at this movie's slowest, it's still fascinating just how lame it all is. It's truly something that can't be described, only seen. Before I give my rating, a moment of silence for the Sarge. Because they got the Sarge, man! The Sarge! Not the Sarge! My honest rating for House of the Dead 2, a strong 3 out of 5. A 4 out of 5. With friends. Number 4. Shaun of the Dead. When I first saw this, I didn't like it. And honestly, I don't really know why. At the time, I wasn't a huge fan of Simon Pegg or Nick Frost, but would go on to be a huge fan of theirs thanks to Hot Fuzz and The World's End. And they're just great and entertaining dudes no matter what they're in. And it's not like I don't like zombie parody movies. Seriously, why didn't I like this movie? I only saw it the one time, so I'm eager to revisit it and see how it holds up. Shaun's life has become stagnant. As a result of his inability to make hard decisions that could benefit his life, he's lost his girlfriend Liz. However, things get interesting when London is infested with a zombie outbreak, and he and his best friend Ed decide to make like heroes to save his mom Mary and Liz with the intention of hunkering down in the local bar. I don't know why I didn't like this movie back in 2006. This was funny. I mean, I don't think it's better than Hot Fuzz, but this was a ton of fun. Underdeveloped teenage mind, I guess. While I do think it takes a little too long to get to the zombie outbreak itself, this is totally made up for by the tremendous character development and acting that somehow takes itself just seriously enough to be legit invested in the characters, but never to a degree that the tone feels off. The chemistry between Simon Pegg and Nick Frost is amazing. The comedic timing, it's all fantastic. Love the record-throwing bit, the channel surfing that basically explains the world state, just great. Even the more dramatic elements worked pretty well. Shaun's love for his mom, that was legit touching. With all that said, I do have a few gripes. I feel like Shaun's stepdad saying that he always loved Shaun as if he was his own, that felt shoehorned in. David was pretty grating as this insensitive, cowardly dumbass, and I do feel like certain beats happen in the movie just so that something exciting or dramatic can happen. And of course, not all of the jokes land. Why crash Pete's car? 2 cars is just more practical for the sake of space. I know it's funny to see everyone crammed in 1 car, but it just seemed like a dumb joke to set up another dumb joke. On the whole, still not my favorite collaboration between Pegg and Frost, nor is it my favorite zombie comedy, but that doesn't change just how much fun it is, and it being one of the better zombie parodies out there. My honest rating for Shaun of the Dead, a 4 out of 5. Number 5. Suspiria. So now that we know that I'm not a fan of the original, it's time to talk about the remake. Before 2018, I was not a huge fan of Dakota Johnson. She just didn't seem like that talented of an actress to me. I mean, sure, she was good in that one brief-ass role she had in Black Mass, but everything before and after was kind of groan-worthy. Then this came out, and it had a lot going against it. It starred Dakota, it was directed by Luca Guadagnino. Sorry if I mispronounced that, which I'm quite sure I did, but he's made movies that I just can't connect with. Call Me By Your Name, A Bigger Splash, those don't do it for me. Sure, I love Tilda Swinton as everyone should, Chloe Grace Moretz, Mia Goth, but I was really skeptical. And yet, when I walked out of that movie theater, I was staggered by how much I adored this movie. But similar to the original, it wasn't as bad as I remember, so now I have to revisit this and see if I remember liking it as much as I did. Set in 1977, Susie Bannion is a young American woman who has traveled to Germany to join the Marcos Dance Academy, which is secretly ran by a powerful coven of witches, led by the reclusive Helena Marcos and the dance choreographer Madame Blanc, who are implied to not see eye to eye, and a power struggle ensues. The secrets of the academy are quickly unraveling as one student finds out and then disappears. Amidst all of this, Susie is being groomed by Madame Blanc as the lead in their upcoming dance performance, which is part of a ritual that will transfer Marcos's soul into Susie's. However, things get complicated when Susie's new friend Sarah starts to uncover the whole truth, and more innocent people will be involved. God, I love this movie. Imperfections and all. Okay, so the reason why I prefer this over the original is because it feels like it's not just symbolism and style for the sake of it. It feels like symbolism being carried by a protagonist that I can invest in, and that there's an actual plot going from point A to point Z. And the characters carrying that plot are well written enough that they don't ever feel like caricatures. As I stated before, this was also the movie that turned me around on Dakota Johnson, who reportedly completed 2 years of ballet training in preparation for the role, and it really showed. She looks quite natural in the environment, though I'm curious to hear from actual dancers if they agree with me, or if their dancer babble made any sense to them when talking about the choreography. The point is, the shooting looked grueling, but I never got the sense that Johnson couldn't measure up. Not sure how I feel about the film being so fucked up that she had to seek out therapy. Swinton is fantastic in all 3 of her roles. I love the inner conflict between the witches. Mia Goth as Sarah was very engaging. The body horror, the practical effects, and that climax. Oh boy, not for the faint of heart. I did mention the imperfections, so let's tackle those. There's a whole lot of emphasis on, I believe, German autumn, where there's riots and terrorist leaders being referenced. I didn't catch the particulars, but it felt like an elaborate way to insert details about a character that disappears and provides a red herring for the characters not the audience. I just didn't feel like it had any real relevance to the story. As much as I love the climax, it's not always clear on what's happening, and anything that can be deciphered is, in my opinion, speculation. Overall, I still really enjoy this flick and find myself watching it at least once a year, so I'll likely make it an annual Halloween watch. My honest rating for Suspiria, a strong 4 out of 5. Number 6. Paranormal Activity. I didn't see it when it first came out, but when I did eventually watch it, I thought anyone who found this scary to have the weakest constitutions. I remember it being so boring. Jesus Christ, it was the Blair Witch Project all over again. Scariest movie ever made. Give me a break, people. Don't look behind you. There's a wall there. It might be the Blair Witch. Ooh. Seriously, that movie was boring too. Ooh. That's something to watch this Halloween. But we're talking about this thing. God, the impact this movie had. Every year there was a new installment. Around this time, no less. And I had zero interest in checking them out. But maybe I missed something. It wouldn't be the first time I've revisited a movie and found it not as bad as I remember, so here we go. The story follows loving couple Katie and Micah. Katie has been experiencing supernatural phenomenon since she was 8 years old, and Micah's decided to use a camera to film any and all possible occurrences. Every night, the malevolent presence does something to scare Katie and Micah. Yet another example of a film that took a second viewing to help enjoy it more. I still don't think it's anything great, but okay, positives. The scares are a bit more effective than I remember. I really enjoyed the little touches of shadows moving on the doors and the slow approaching heavy footsteps. A possessed Katie simply staring at Micah, that was done pretty well. The acting is spot on and feels natural. The ending sure is harrowing and, well, that's about it. As for the negatives, I know if I were in Micah's shoes, I'd stay up all night and wait for the demon to make his move and do everything in my power to resist it with more than powder. Speaking of Micah, I have no idea what this dude's problem is. At the start of the flick, he barely even believed that the hauntings were happening. But the moment he cracks open a book, he considers himself an expert on demonology. What exactly his aversion is to letting Katie call the specialist is beyond me. Why Katie wouldn't simply go behind his back to call the specialist, especially after he goes behind her back to get a Ouija board, it's a wonder why they even stay together. And Katie's constant, "Where are you going? Please come back," that got grating extraordinarily fast. Overall, not as bad as I remember, but it hits its fair share of tropes that I can't ever consider it all that good either. My honest rating for Paranormal Activity, a 3 out of 5. And last but not least, number 7, The Frighteners. Never seen it. All I know is that it's pre-Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson. So that piqued my interest quite a bit. Let's get into it. Frank Bannister is a con artist, but not any traditional kind. He's a paranormal investigator who gets rid of ghosts that haunt people in their homes. The ghosts are real, but they collaborate together, making the hauntings and scam people out of their money to get rid of the ghosts, and they're none the wiser. However, his talents are soon put to the true test when a demonic Grim Reaper starts killing random people. The problem is, the killings happen around him, and Frank becomes the primary suspect in the deaths. Oh my damn, I did not expect to have this much fun with this! You know how Ghostbusters is an 80s icon? I feel like The Frighteners is an unsung 90s icon, at least in terms of edgy horror comedies. I love the banter between Frank and his ghostly cohorts, especially Cyrus. He cracked me up. Thank you, God, for Chi McBride. What also gets me is just how good the effects are for 96. Ghost technology really wanted to soar in the 90s, didn't it? The level of creativity with the ghosts and how they work is so much fun to watch. Of course, both Michael J. Fox and Trini Alvarado are outstanding, but if there's anyone who steals the show, it's the villains. Johnny Bartlett, and Agent Dammers. First off, I never see Jake Busey in anything outside of Starship Troopers. And Jeffrey Combs as Dammers, geez, talk about the perfect mix of both hilarious and threatening. I might argue that he's one of the most underrated villains of all time. This movie was worth it almost for him alone. I admit there's some last-minute revelations toward the end that feel just a little too forced, but that's a huge nitpick. I love this movie and just might consider making it an annual Halloween watch. My honest rating for The Frighteners, a strong 4 out of 5. Thanks so much for watching it, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy out there. Please wear a mask if you go out. Hope to see you soon.